Lando Norris. I'm sure that name has either sent many into a fit of rage just at the mention of him, or others in a fit of delusion that is definitely an issue that should raise concern. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a person so polarizing that wasn't a politician or something. People either love this guy to death or hate this guy to death, and I find that really interesting, you know? So initially today, I just wanted to deep dive into that and see what has made him so polarizing, but surprise, surprise, I already did that around this time last year, and even more embarrassingly, it's my most popular video, so good job for forgetting that, duck. But despite that, I still want to talk about Lando, and in that video, I said how his performances in his car are a big reason why people hate him, which got me thinking, has he even performed that bad? Because here's something to think about. Is Lando bad, or have we just been spoiled in recent times? Max Verstappen is one of the most talented drivers in the sport, period. You'd be crazy to at the very least not consider him in maybe being in your top 5 of all time. And then before him, we have Lewis Hamilton, who needs zero introduction. You don't win 7 titles and 105 races by just being lucky. I'm pretty sure skill is involved. And then before him, we had Sebastian Vettel, who was one of the fastest and most consistent drivers in the sport's history. And then it's Kimi Raikkonen, and then it's Alonso, and of course, Michael Schumacher. Point is, since the millennia, we have seen some of the most ridiculously talented and fastest drivers this sport has ever seen. No matter how you think of it, these drivers being blessed to us in such a quick succession of time is not natural at all, and we have well and truly been spoiled. With the exception of Rosberg and Button, but even then you could argue those two, every champion since 2000 have been some of the best to have ever do it. So is Lando truly bad, or are we holding him to a higher regard than we should because we have been spoiled? Actually, I won't say Lando is bad because duh, he's not. He made it to F1. So I'll instead rephrase it to, is Lando lucky? Because many would argue he is, since the team is apparently favored to him and the car is mighty good, of course. So here we are. My train of thought has led us to asking if Lando Norris is good or just lucky. Let's go through his best races in his career and determine whether they were lucky or done on merit. So go join the Discord to ignite more fire to the Lando Norris pot, and subscribe if you're new if you love the winter. So enough yapping, and let's get to quacking.
A good weather for a race, but especially for a duck.
So before we get to discussing, let's quickly define what it means to be lucky, because if simply having the best car to everyone else and winning in it makes you lucky, then like every great in the sport is lucky with that logic. So for the purpose of this video, I have defined being lucky as having race events and decisions go in your favor. For example, if Lando qualified in P8 but finished the race in P1 after some drivers ahead of him were taken out due to crashes, penalties, or what have you, then I would consider that lucky, since yeah, he kept his head down. However, if the others had kept their heads down too, Lando would not have been P1, nowhere near it. However, if he qualified in P8 but finished the race in P5 due to the same conditions, then there could be more leeway since he didn't gain super massively from the other drivers' mistakes. Basically, if the factors you cannot predict, such as a crash or an engine failure, happen and it benefits Lando in a massive way, then it's lucky, I say. So with that, let's go through Lando's best races, beginning chronologically with Bahrain 2019. This was Lando's second ever race in F1, and he would qualify pretty good in P10 and even was boosted up a spot in P9 for the starting grid after some Grosjean shenanigans in qualifying. So great, how good was his start? He had a shit start and by lap 2 was in 14th. Not ideal, but whatever. Throughout the race, he would make some moves, cutting his way all the way up to 6th by the race result. It was a cool, calm, and collected race from him in just his second outing, and would be his first proper race. However, there are some things to consider. For starters, he had some help from his teammate Sainz, who didn't push a car away from Lando, but instead got pushed himself, which benefited Lando. And also later in the race, Hulkenberg's engine would blow to smithereens, giving yet another place. So realistically, if those two never failed, Lando would have been P8, just one spot above where he started. And while some may see that as being lucky to get that P6, I see this one as a good race, since he did drive good from 14th, and while he did reap the benefits of his competitors being dumb, it wasn't for a huge substantial amount, so I don't think it was too dramatic. And that's really it for his rookie season, since it was just a year full of impressive driving, but nothing too spectacular or revolutionary for a good rookie. So let's move on to 2020 with, of course, the very first race in Austria. Now, like I said, 2019 was a good year for him, but it didn't feature a crazy wacky weekend where he was in a spot he shouldn't have been in. However, Austria 2020 was just that. McLaren in 2020 had a good car, a great one even, since they could fight often in the top 6 thanks to Ferrari being incompetent losers that year. What? No way they were that. So while Carlos in the race weekend qualified qualified in 8th, Lando qualified all the way up in 4th, splitting the Red Bulls, and for the race, he would stay thereabout. He would face tough competition in that race from the likes of Albon in the Red Bull, Checo in the Force Racing India point, and Charles in the shitbox, but Lando would keep his head up high and fight with them, holding his place. It would have already been an exceptional weekend, but to make things even better, he finished on the podium. However, there is a big fat juicy but with that. On lap 60-something, Lewis Hamilton decided to ruin Albon's hope and dreams once and for all, position gain for Norris. However, unlucky for Lewis, he got a 5-second time penalty for the move, and with Lando behind in 4th after he got ahead of Checo with the mighty move, he needed to up the pace, and that he did. Right at the line, Lando barely crept into Lewis's 5-second gap, which got Lando the podium for the race. So while the podium, let's be real folks, was on pure luck, he kind of mitigated that with his insane pace and proved he had the dog in him. Plus, not to mention how he still drove good and was able to still score very good points, podium or not. His second good race of the season though was probably at Monza, where he qualified in 6th and finished in 4th. Now his lap 1 was mighty good since he moved his way up to 3rd by the second chicane and looked set for a great race. However, the safety car came out for Magnussen and Lewis pit in it, but the pit lane was closed, which saw him get penalized heavily and essentially thrown out of the race. Pit lane opened up again, so Lando pitted along with the rest of the field, except for a few drivers like Lance Stroll. Turns out everyone should have done that since the red flag would come out later for Charles attempting suicide, which of course benefited Stroll and more notably Gasly, who now have new tires. So while Sainz was able to push through and fight with Gasly for the win, Lando got stuck behind Lance, which I know may seem like the worst thing he can do, but don't disrespect pre-Mugello 2020 Lance. I know those are a lot of conditions, but trust me, man. So Lando would eventually finish in 4th while Lance took home the P3. I would still say this was a good race for him because even despite Lewis's penalty, he was always going to be in the top 5, which was a mighty result that season. Plus, the Force Racing India point was a beast of a car that day, so I'll cut him some slack and you should too. Finally, Lando's last truly great race that season was in Bahrain, where he qualified in 9th and finished a very good and respectable 4th. So qualifying wasn't the best for McLaren in general since Sainz was at 15th, so they need something like a bomb going off on track should they come back. Well, they still need more, so they probably need like a car rolling over and another safety car. So with much competition out, Lando and McLaren just need to get some calls right and maybe slash a competitor's tire to get even higher. Wonderful. Things are going awesome for Lando. What's next? Another bomb goes off? That would be lovely. Great. So Lando found himself 4th throughout all of that, and despite him actually pulling off some good moves, come on man, if it weren't for the safety cars and Grosjean fucking exploding bringing out a red flag, I don't think Lando would have been 4th, nowhere near it, so I say this one was lucky. So now for 2021, his big breakout year in my opinion. Now truth be told, Lando would have many great races throughout the entire year, so I'm only going to highlight his best ones, starting with Imola 2021. The race began with Lando qualifying in 7th, and he's immediately down to 9th, which sucks, but is quickly finding pace in the rain. After a brief safety car, Lando starts cutting his way up, and soon enough is behind Danny Rick in 5th and demands the team, "Let me by, I am faster," to which they comply. Lando is now in the clean air on a drying track, and before he can have guys faster than him catch up, Russell decides to murder Bottas on a whim, bringing out a red flag. So bam, new tires on the McLaren when he is in 3rd, and now he knows he must use them if he is to get a podium. So come the restart, and he immediately blows past Charles and stays in 2nd until Lewis is able to unfortunately overtake him after trying to kill himself, sensing Ferrari 4 years later. So despite the luck of the previously aforementioned attempted suicide and murder case, I would say this is clinical from Lando since he showed great pace in all conditions and made some clean moves. Next in 2021 would be in Monza, and this one is polarizing. After qualifying in 4th, the race starts and his teammate Big Dick Rick goes into the lead while Lando goes into 3rd, and for a while Lando would massively hold up Lewis while I Want Your Cock in My Mouth Rick and Max run away in the lead. This was great driving from Lando, and a double podium seemed on the cards for McLaren, and then Max and Lewis pit, and if you know anything about 2021, if those two even locked eyes on the track, it was on sight. So after the safety car, Lando gets ahead of Charles, who snuck his way up there, and now it's a McLaren 1-2. However, Lando was faster. He was initially catching please, oh please give me your dick Rick, but McLaren went over the phone to tell him to play it safe and hold position, to which Lando unfortunately complied. So despite Lando driving a good race, even aside from Max and Lewis dying, Lando could have won, and had that happen, would have been more lucky than good? Let me know. But overall, 2021 would genuinely be a great year for Lando since it was good driving and good overall vibes from him. But quickly brushing past 2022 before we get to the good stuff, 2022 was the opposite of 21. I mean, sure, he had good races, but the only notable one was in Imola where he got his only podium there. He qualified in 5th and finished in 3rd after Ferrari opened up their cheeks and allowed Lando to run through them. Sainz on the opening lap got beached on the Sainz trap while Charles felt the aura of Lando and slipped out of his way. I mean, don't spin this, man. It was as lucky as it could get, and saying otherwise is kind of pointless. So let's just get into the juicy bits now. 2023, 2024, and 2025, the reality changing years. 2023 began McLaren's rise to the top after an upgrade package in Austria made the team become top 5 and podium contenders. Also coincidentally, Lando started to get hated on for his performances around here, so let's see what's really up. Now I'm going to be real with you folks. I went back and saw the highlights of 2023 and even went back to view full races with F1 TV. I couldn't find a situation where Lando was lucky or had some sort of consideration of it except for one. I am referring to Coda, where he qualified in 2nd and finished 2nd. Technically, he drove a good race and was leading at one point. However, Max Verstappen, so he finished in 3rd behind him, and Lewis, who was on the better strategy, but whoa, Lewis and Charles got disqualified for plank wear, which saw Lando get back up to 2nd. I would say this was still a good race from him since he finished on the podium either way and saw good driving from him. But aside from that, nothing really stuck out to me as offensive or worthy to be talked about, so let me know if you think otherwise. But 2024, however, oh boy, Miami 2024 was lucky. The lad even admitted it himself. During the race, he was doing fine, and when everybody pit, he decided to stay out and extend. And what happened? Sargent and K-Mac have a dork off, bringing out the safety car and allowing Lando to get a free stop. In the clean air, he ran away with the win. So yeah, this one is slam dunk lucky. Don't lie now. Another race I want to highlight though is Mexico, since after being thrown around by Max in the early stages, Lando got severely hindered and needed to make up the places, and he did that and more thanks to some safety cars and Charles again slipping at the side of Lando's aura. This one I feel is a good race, since while yes, he was lucky somewhat, he still drove good. Like, he didn't punt somebody off or was slower than he should have been in his car, so yeah, he did good to claw back. But other than that, I got nothing more for you this year, since it was either Lando performing as he should, that being qualifying in like 3rd and getting 2nd or winning or whatever, or bottling the fuck out of his races. So one could maybe argue he's lucky having a good car, since if he didn't have it, he wouldn't be anywhere near Max, but who knows? Let's see if 2025 can be his redemption year. Here goes nothing. I'm going to rapid fire them since there is a lot to talk about. So, in Australia, yes, Oscar killed himself in the safety cars, but he did well to hold his own against Max, so good race, Lando. Miami sprint race was a literal replication of Miami 2024, so lucky sprint win, Lando. Imola featured a safety car and strategic blunder with Oscar, which saw Lando get 2nd from 4th, so I say that one was also lucky. Austria, he won after traffic got in the way of him and Oscar, but Lando did lead like all that race and defended Oscar initially, so I say it was a good race for Lando. Silverstone, had it not been for Oscar trying to get penalized, wouldn't have won. Simple as that, so another lucky one. And Hungary, he had a bad start, but decided to go on the one stop, which saw immense tire management from his side to win the race from a hard-charging Oscar, so another good one. And finally at Monza, he finished in 2nd after Piastri got out of his way, but Lando was ahead on merit for like all of the race and had the pace to overtake him anyway, so it's just another good race for him. So after looking back at his career highlights so far, is Lando Norris actually good, or do things fall into his favor often? Well, looking back at the races mentioned, 6 or 7 of them, shut the fuck up, were overwhelmingly due to luck in my opinion, since while he still drove good, yes, the result doesn't tell the whole story, and luck definitely had massive parts to play in it. However, with the remaining 10 or 11 races, he just drove good, and even with factors playing into the result as well, he drove more good and was set for big points anyway, so the luck was just an added bonus instead of the sole factor for success. So my final verdict is that Lando is a good driver, a great one even, since he has proven multiple times that when the team needs a lap from him to perform, he will do more than that, making his speed his deadliest asset. The main reason why I think Lando is seen as this lucky driver is because he bottles so much, especially after 2023, which is totally fair, but think about it like this. Imagine you were driving in the midfield where the expectation is relatively low for you, making every P5 plus result a wonder. Imagine now being quickly shifted up to the sharp end, and where you were once being praised for finishing in like 5th, 4th, or 3rd, you are now being extremely hated on by every person on the planet. That staggering switch up is detrimental, no two ways about it, and the response Lando took initially was boosting himself up, not in a positive reinforcement way, but in a I am better than all of you way. So now his unwarranted ego is just adding more fuel to the fire of people hating on him and calling him lucky. But now Lando isn't as egotistical anymore. He is way more real about himself and knows what he is capable of and pushes that instead of comparing himself to others. And right when he changes like that, his bottles start to decrease. Of course, he still has his moment like in Vegas, but people botch starts all the time, man. This is nothing new. And while we're at it, we cannot sit here and say Lando is super lucky to have his car and undeserving of the title when literally every champion since like 2000 has had the outright fastest car at one point. In 2003, Michael Schumacher wasn't the best driver according to many. In 2010 and 12, Seb wasn't the best driver according to many. In 2017 and 18, Lewis wasn't the best driver according to many. In 2022, Max wasn't the best driver according to many. It's a simple cycle that is always going to repeat itself. Plus, luck decides many championships anyway. Had Paul di Resta never crashed in Brazil, maybe Seb wouldn't have been champion. If Timo Glock didn't go wide, maybe Massa would have been champion. If Kimi's engine in 2005 never blew up every single race, maybe Alonso would only be a one-time champion or a zero-time if Michael's engine never blew up in Japan. If Ferrari never imploded in 2022, maybe Charles would have been champion. Or if the rules were followed in 2021, maybe Lewis would have his 8th. Luck often decides every championship, and just because you don't like Lando or don't rate him highly doesn't mean he is a lucky champion. Nothing about this year even gives me an iota of thought thinking Lando was lucky this year. If anything, this was one of his better years, certainly much more than 2024, since even in his quote-unquote bottles, he still found his way up to 2nd and 3rd in cars that produce too much dirty air, a feat that Oscar is failing at right now despite McLaren's performance only slightly dropping. And if you see it as luck, then acknowledge that your favorite driver is likely champion too because of luck. Formula 1 is a long race, and just like with any, you win only when you cross a line first, and Lando is very likely set to go on and do that, and that does not make him lucky. So enough with the accusations, man. So those are my thoughts on Lando. Now, a big problem with this video is how I didn't mention literally every race he's ever done, so perhaps my sample wasn't representative enough. I also could maybe define luck a little bit better, so if you have a better definition, be sure to let me know. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for the continued support, and make sure to join in if you want cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe since it really helps me out, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.